So we've reached our last chapter in our mini geometry unit. This is probably one of my favorite topics in math. Now it's going to require you to use a calculator, and we will eventually do this without one. But for now, I want you to learn the rules and the process. The Pythagorean Theorem, most of you actually know what it is. You just don't know how to apply it and what it means. So let's go look. Notice it says parts of a right triangle. So when we're dealing with the Pythagorean Theorem, it's going to be a right triangle. So look at my triangle here. Sides A and B are called legs. So we call those the two sides that come together and make the right angle. Here's what I mean by that. The two sides that are making the right angle. And you'll see here in a minute, here is my right angle. So what happened was the two sides, A and B, came together to make that right angle. Those are the legs. Side C is called the hypotenuse. And I need you to write this in, and I'm going to be looking to see that you actually wrote it in. The hypotenuse is always, circle that, underline that, highlight that. The hypotenuse is always the longest side. You need to know that for later. Okay, that is your hypotenuse. So I would label it in your notes. I would draw an arrow, say C is the hypotenuse. C always has to be the longest side. Okay? Now, what is the Pythagorean Theorem? The Pythagorean Theorem is used to find a missing side in a right triangle. Again, the Pythagorean Theorem is only for a right triangle. We need to understand that. It's a set formula that you have to have memorized. That is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. The c squared always has to be by itself. The c squared is always your longest side. This formula tells me if I take my two legs and I square each one, meaning multiply them by themselves. When I add them together, it'll be the square of C. So let's go look what that is. All of these, I'm looking to find my hypotenuse, meaning I'm looking to find the longest side. So little check here. When you solve for your missing length, it should be bigger than the other two because it's the hypotenuse. Every time you do this, you must write the formula. You will lose a point if you do not have this every time. Then I'm going to look at this side. It does not matter which one's A and which one's B. So A is 12, right? So I'm going to replace A with 12 and put a square. You must write the square. Then I'm going to take my other leg and replace B. There's an x there. That's what I'm looking for. That's my C. So I'm going to write equals x squared. I go through and do the math. 12 squared is 144. 5 squared is 25. And x squared I can't do yet. So I'm going to go do the math. 144 plus 25 is 169. Bring down your equals x squared. Now, most of you might be sitting there saying, oh, I did it. X is 169. No, it's not. That's when I took x and I squared it. So I need to undo a square. To undo something that is squared, I take the square root and I do it to both sides. Okay? So when I do that, what happens is I'm left with just x. That was the whole reason I did it. If I square something, then square root it, I'm left with the original thing. Then I have the square root of 169, and that is 13. Is 13 bigger than 12 and 5? Yes. So you did the right thing. Let's look at number 2. Again, always write your formula. Once you've written your formula, we are then going to look at our legs. I have 15. So I'm going to replace a with 15 and square it. My other leg is 18. So I'm going to replace b with 18 and square it. Now I have equals x squared. Where did I get that x from? Well, that is my hypotenuse. That is the side opposite the right angle. Okay? So let's go through and do the math. 15 squared is 225. 18 squared is 324. That's still going to equal x squared. That's what I'm looking for. Then when I add these two together, I get 549 equals x squared. How do I undo a square? This is what we started our school year with. I undo a square by taking its square root. So the square root of 549 and the square root of x squared. I take its square root. That's going to leave me with just x. Now, you notice my equal signs kind of change. It kind of looks like squiggly lines. The reason is if you go back and look at the instructions, okay, 549 is not a perfect square. So what's happening here is I'm going to end up with a decimal. And it says round to the nearest tenth. So when I put my x, I can't put equals because that is not the exact answer. I'm approximating. So when I put in my calculator, it's approximately 23.4. Okay? Number 3 and 4, if you choose to do it, is extra credit. But you will only get that extra credit if you show the work just like I have in 1 and 2. So I just showed you how to find the hypotenuse. So that's when I was looking for C. But now when I'm looking for one of the legs, my steps change a bit. I still write my formula. I still take one leg, but now look at my leg. My leg is X. I always make that my A. I always make the leg I'm looking for A, and you'll see why in a minute. The other leg, I make B. And finally, whatever the hypotenuse is my C. So you go through. X squared, now I do 8 squared. 8 times 8 is 64, and 10 times 10 is 100. Now this is a two-step equation, really. I subtract 64 from both sides. So I have x squared equals 36. To undo a square, I take the square root. And I'm going to take the square root of 36. So this is what your work should look like right now, okay? The square root of x squared will always be x. That's the whole reason we did it. The square root of 36 is 6. I found my leg. And it's a leg, so your leg should be shorter than your hypotenuse. And in this case, it is. So we are okay. So let's go look at my next one, okay? Again, write your formula. I don't care. It's not a matter of difficulty. It's a matter of doing the steps. So I have x squared plus b squared equals c squared. The more you write it, the more you'll memorize it. Then, again, I like to take my missing leg and make that A. My other leg was 23. That is my B. And finally, my hypotenuse was 25. So that is my C. Now I go through, take out your calculator. I'm not expecting you to do this in your head. 23 times 23, okay, because I don't have to do my x squared. That gives me 529. 25 times 25 is 625. Now I'm going to tell you, it doesn't hurt to memorize some of your perfect squares. Then I subtract 529 from both sides. I'm left with x squared equals 96. Then I'm going to simply take the square root of both, okay? So I'm showing you what I'm doing to both sides. I'm left with x. Now, 96, I know because I have my perfect squares to 25 memorized, is not a perfect square. So it's going to be approximately, because I put in my calculator, 9.8, because I'm rounding to the nearest tenth. Okay? So just like on the other page, 7 and 8 are extra credit. You also have 9 through 12. I'm going to state this. This is technically extra credit, but there is a strong possibility you see these 4 again somewhere that is graded. So if you do them on this extra credit video, I can give you pointers if you're right or wrong, and then you'll know for when you do have them and it counts. So our last topic, or the last type of problem you could see with this, it wants us to determine if the 3 given side lengths form a right triangle. So we're going to use our Pythagorean theorem. Anytime you see instructions that say right triangle, we're dealing, and sides, we're dealing with our Pythagorean theorem. So this is how we determine if it's a right triangle. Write your formula. That's a must. Then you're going to replace each number. But now I circled the 20 for a reason. Why did I circle 20? Well, if I look, I have 10, 15, and 20. 20 is my largest number. So when you go plug them in, yes, it does matter what goes where. Okay? The A and the B can go anywhere you want. But the C, your biggest number, must go into C. If you don't do that, it will change your work. So now this type is what I feel very straightforward, especially with a calculator. You just do 10 squared, which is 100, 15 squared, which is 225, and 20 squared, which is 400. I add the 100 and 225 to get 325. Now, that does not equal 400. And yes, you do have to put a line through the equal sign because they are not equal. So my 2 sides are not equal when I square them, meaning it is not a right triangle. You need to write not a right triangle. You can't just show the work and think, okay, I did it. Let's go look at 16. I write my formula. Look at your biggest number. This is super important. I then replace A, B, and C with their values. I square both. 7 squared is 49. 24 squared is 576. And 25 squared is 625. I add 49 and 576 to give me 625. And 625 does equal 625. So therefore, yes, it is a right triangle. So these are not all extra credit. 17 and 18, you need to try. This is very important that you understand how to replace what with what. This is not a challenging topic, but if you choose to not do the work, it will be. So please take your time.